The soundtrack might be one of the best things about that movie. It really might. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network Movie Review Club, for want of a better phrase at the moment, because it's not really the summer blockbuster review season anymore, because, we're well into spring. Some of these that we talk about aren't going to be blockbusters. It's just me, Robert Winfree, and Mark Radulich talking about one of the movies that came out that we think is worth discussing, that we both want to see. Something along those lines. Tonight, Mark and I are going to be tackling the movie that came out Friday, place number 2 over the weekend, as far as the top 10 for receipts. Falling out to Pitch Perfect, which makes me weep for the future of the human race. But what are you going to do? We're talking about Mad Max Fury Road. George Miller's, 30 years later, something like that, he returns to that franchise. We got a new entry. Everyone's favorite, originally Australian, post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's a great time, and Mark and I are going to have some disagreements tonight. And if you listen to our Transformers review, those tend to make for the best shows, because we yell at each other about things. We just have different perspectives. But Mark is here. I better bring him on before he starts throwing stuff at me. All the way from Florida. Mark, man, I'm sorry. I know you've had to wear pants today, and that's always a rough day.
Okay. Let me first say this. I unfortunately am not as prepared to do this review as I would have liked to have been, and by that I mean there was a specific review, and I can't remember if it was fresh or rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, to be perfectly honest with you, but it was a review that made me laugh, and it summed up my opinion of Fury Road better than I think I ever could. And if I learned nothing else from the Rush Limbaugh show, it was when somebody says something better than you did or can, just share that with the world and don't try to redo it. Unfortunately, I can't find that review. I've looked at a couple of rotten reviews, looked at the dates, because it was done before the movie officially came out on the 15th, and just a little bit of time I was able to try to look through reviews. I couldn't find it again. But here was the crux of it. They said, if the Road Warrior is if you would ask a 5-year-old to direct a movie with his Hot Wheels.
Oh, I know the quote. I know the quote you're thinking of, I believe. It's, if the Road Warrior is the Citizen Kane of, post-apocalyptic action movies, then this would be I can't pronounce it because I don't know my German, but this would be like the Gotterdong, or Dom, something like that.
Something like that. But the quote that I was actually keying in on was, Fury Road is what if you asked the same kid when he was 14 and hopped up on Mountain Dew to direct the same movie with his Hot Wheel cars.
Okay, yeah, I remember. I read that, actually. If Road Warrior is a 2-year-old playing around with Legos, Fury Road is a 14-year-old who's lit his Hot Wheels on fire while hopped up on Mountain Dew.
Right. That I can't find that anywhere. So on Rotten Tomatoes, but I laughed my ass off the first time that I read it, and never have more true words been ever captured on a page about a movie. Jesus fucking Christ. And might I say this, because to me I think this is the pinnacle of the argument we're going to have tonight. If you were to take a movie and let it be 2 hours of just action with minimal plot and almost no dialogue, most people would say that is a shit movie. It was a spectacle. It was a sight to behold. Maybe one might go as far as say it was a fun time at the movies. However, you would be arguing that it's not a good movie in terms of the craft of movie making. Yet somehow in 2015, as we approach the summer blockbuster movie season, everyone has lost their collective fucking mind and is almost 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics are just whipping it out and spray painting the walls with it, okay? The Avengers, which had a plot, characterization, all the things that go into the craft of movie making, 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. Fury Road is a 2-hour car chase with almost no plot and almost no dialogue, and you people, Robert Winfree, are out of your fucking minds in love with this movie, and I don't understand why, and this is why we can't have nice things. And that, folks, is the review. Let's do plugs.
We can't have nice things because Pitch Perfect 2 exists. We can't have nice things because Ben Stiller is making Zoolander 2. We can't have nice things because a direct-to-DVD fifth entry into the Tremors franchise can't do any better than Jamie F***ing Kennedy as your sidekick. This movie has nothing to do with why we as a society cannot have nice things.
You explain to me. I want an explanation, Robert Winfree, because apparently now I'm fucking Elmer Fudd. I want an explanation why suddenly it's okay to praise a 2-hour car chase when we weren't doing that before. In any other... Look, last year, you and I got into a sissy slap fight over Transformers, which had dialogue and a plot. Okay?
It had a crappy dialogue and a crappy plot.
Nonetheless, it was there. There was more plot in Transformers Age of Extinction than there was in Fury Road. And you and I got into a six-slap fight.
You want the actual answer? Okay. I'll go ahead and give it to you. This is a movie that, first of all, has complete understanding of itself. It knows what it is. I think Michael Bay is still somewhat deluded enough to think he's making movies that don't suck donkey ass. Look, here's Mark Wahlberg. He's got dialogue. It's acting, right? And look, here's a bunch of CGI'd explosions and Kelsey Grammer. People like Kelsey Grammer. And oh, look, here's Stanley Tucci trying to be Steve Jobs. He can't get rid of a bomb to save his life. Please, validate me in my career.
I don't think it's fair to psychoanalyze Michael Bay and use that as a review of a movie. Let us be fair.
You brought up the comparison. Let me contrast it here. Fury Road,
okay.
Yeah, it's a 2-hour car chase movie. That's all it is. It knows what it is, and it tries to be the best 2-hour car chase movie it can possibly be. And I have to applaud that. I mean, look, by the same token, Cinderella is darn near 2 hours of telling little girls they can do whatever they want. And it's not going to be anything more than that, but it is the best darn 2 hours of princess action that you're going to find. I can't criticize it for that, for being the best at what it is. I mean, it's just silly.
Cinderella had a plot. Cinderella had characterization. Cinderella's characters had motives. There was an arc. There was a hero's arc in Cinderella.
Wait a minute. Now you're just trying to be silly. You're going to tell me you didn't see the arc in Tom Hardy's version of Mad Max, which, granted, not the best thing about the movie. And
it's the same arc in the last movie. Whoa. It was the same arc in not the first Mad Max. The first Mad Max, much like El Mariachi, and we'll talk about this tomorrow night on Long Road to Ruin, really does stand alone as its own movie. Awesome, and I don't have any problems with it. But Tom Hardy's hero's arc is the same in Fury Road as it was in The Road Warrior, as it was in Beyond Thunderdome.
Well, I'm going to argue about that. I'm going to argue that Road Warrior and Thunderdome have the same arc because they don't. But now, look, from a overall standpoint, as far as this one relative to the Road Warrior, yeah, I agree with you. They kind of redid it as far as, where the character is at the start of the film versus where he is at the end. That's absolutely true. They took the Max character, and again, at the start of Road Warrior, he's, alone, slightly more together than Tom Hardy is at the beginning of this one, but very much a loner, very much, anti-other people. And then at the end, he kind of gains a little bit of redemption. I would argue that he comes full circle as far as regaining his humanity in Beyond Thunderdome.
And I'm sorry, it is the same thing in Thunderdome. I just watched it last night. He starts off alone. He makes a deal with Tina Turner, who says, "We don't need another hero. We just need you to kill a bitch." He almost does. They they say you broke the deal. Now spin the wheel. And then he ends up finding the Lost Boys, and he doesn't want to help the Lost Boys because what they believe in isn't real. and and he only tries to help them when they go and run away, okay? And he has to go get them back under duress, by the way. They begged him to go get them back.
Okay, but still, at the end of that one, he sacrifices his own personal freedom to ensure their safety.
Right.
Again, that kind of self-sacrifice is something that exists at the core of humanity versus what he does in The Road Warrior, which is, even at the end of it, still somewhat selfishly based. And again, this is not the particular... I mean, we're now discussing the other trilogy.
But my point is, I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say there weren't, like, defined characters, in the sense that, like, who the bad guys are. Look, here's the thing, in all seriousness. I'm not going to say Fury Road was not well put together. I think it's a beautiful Circus du Soleil. Okay? It is Circus du Soleil with cars. It is cats with car explosions. Okay? That's what it is. It's very nice to look at. It's very pretty. I think who the villain is because he's the worst looking thing on there. And I'll even give you credit. The villain had motive to do what he was doing. And to a degree, I get Tom Hardy's arc in this. Like I said, though, it's just the same arc as in the other movies. He has no personal growth as a character.
I agree, and I think part of the reason they have to do that is, again, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome came out 30 years ago, a little bit before I was born. Not much, mind you, but a little bit. It's not fair to the contemporary moviegoer to simply tack on another edition to this franchise. You really have to kind of start, not from square one, but you've got to be kind of close to the beginning in a lot of ways to introduce everyone to the character in the world. And
okay, but I'm not arguing that. My problem is that you and I can sit here for the next hour and talk about some of the flaws with this movie, and if we agree that they were flaws and, this is not a perfect movie, I wouldn't be as aggravated as I am. But people are like, flaws and all, it's fucking perfect. That doesn't make any sense to me. And why is this movie getting the jerk-off treatment, but Age of Extinction is a piece of trash? When ultimately, they have the same fundamental problem.
They have the same fundamental problem, but again, at its core, you have the same issues. The execution of everything else around them is worlds different. And that's, I think, kind of the crux of this. Age of Extinction, it had the most linear plot of any Transformers movie. It was still a bit excessively convoluted. I maintain Age of Extinction was far too long, and we had that argument before. Feel free to, everyone out there, go back and listen to Mark and I debate the merits of various editing techniques.
On my YouTube
I
page.
also maintain, and look, here's the other thing about it. I think you had much stronger characters in Mad Max than you did in Age of Extinction. I mean, by a country mile.
No, I mean, I was arguing that before. Like Imperator Joe, right? Yeah, he's the bad guy and he's menacing. He's awesome to look at. He's a modern Darth Vader. He just embodies evil on the screen. And I think he's well written in a very simple way, but there's nothing more to him than that. He's bad guy McVillain. He's the evil tyrant king. That's as much of a caricature as anything else. That's my problem with this. This is 2 hours of car explosions and tropes, which is fine, but no one's calling it that. They're saying this is like the greatest movie they've ever seen. But and I don't know if I'm really expressing this the right way, but I feel like we've seen this before, and and those movies don't get high marks. You want to pick on Age of Extinction, that was one that just came to mind. But I mean, how many other action movies for action's sake have we seen said that and gave it low marks? Why does this one get away with high marks? Because it's a prettier movie.
Well, there's a few things about this movie that I think set it above the other action movies for action movies' sake. One of them, believe it or not, I mean, you mentioned the plot is rather simplistic. Believe it or not, that's the mark in its favor. Hang on.
Well, no, hang on. For the people who are listening, let's tell them what the plot is. Okay, the plot is we're going to drive this way. Oh, the thing we're driving to doesn't exist? Well, let's go back then and just take over the kingdom.
Okay, that is overly simplistic.
That is the plot, my friend.
That's like saying The Godfather is about the youngest son of an Italian family coming to terms with dealing with being the head of the mafia.
No. Don't you try to dress up a hooker.
Hold on. I don't mean Fury Road is anywhere near as complex as The Godfather. That's absolutely not true. I'm saying that by dumbing something down to its barest bones, anything can sound simple.
I brought Melissa to my wife, my lovely wife, to see this movie. Melissa, what was the plot of Fury Road?
Drive cars, save the women.
I'm done. Plugs.
No, that's fair, and no. Look, I can't disagree with that being the action, because that is what happens. Look, as far as the plot goes, again, it's minimal. You are introduced very early to, Tom Hardy's character of Max. We get a prolonged sequence into the title card, which is fine with me. He's captured. They use him to transfuse blood into all of these cancer-ridden adolescents, because apparently that helps stave off the effects of whatever tumors are ravaging their bodies.
Well, I think they're inbred is the problem.
That too. It's a combination of, lack of genetic diversity and radioactive waste. I mean, there's all these problems. Then it turns, the group that has captured him is that of, the evil tyrant King Immortan Joe, incidentally enough, played by the same actor who played Toe Cutter in the first Mad Max movie, which was nice, for those of us who pay attention to little things like that. Then Joe's, general, his second in command, what have you, Charlize Theron, has kidnapped his wives and is trying to escape with them to, a safe haven. He goes after them. Tom Hardy's Max is brought along because he's hooked up to Nicholas Holt's character to transfuse blood while they're going through the first level of insanity. Max escapes, begrudgingly joins with Furiosa, and again, car chase. The goal they were going to is not there. They turn around and decide that their best course of action is trying to take out and subsequently cut off Joe from his actual fortress. And they win. I mean, again, it's not a complicated plot. It's extraordinarily simple. I just feel that in this particular instance, there's enough plot to justify the action, as opposed to other movies where plot is stupid to justify action. I mean, look, I thought about this the other day, because I got back from it. I'm wondering, okay, why do I prefer this to the latest Fast and Furious movie? What is it about this movie I like more? Well, for starters, first of all, one of the things that you have to know about this movie that I love to death, something like 85 to 90% of the effects you see on screen are practical. When a car blows up, George Miller blew up a car.
I can appreciate the craft. That's a cop-out in terms of reviewing the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, again, from an execution standpoint, I have almost no complaints with this movie. It's made almost flawlessly.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you were to say, independently, did you enjoy Fury Road, I would tell you, yeah. I also like a Baconator from Wendy's. I mean, I can enjoy trash, okay? And this was well shot. Look, here's the thing, because I want to be fair. Was Fury Road well shot? Yes. Was it well acted? Yes. I actually don't have a problem with anyone's acting, including Tom Hardy revisiting his Bane character. I don't have a problem with any of that. I loved the practical effects. The car chases in and of themselves, which this whole movie stands upon, were extraordinarily well executed. And so the production of the movie, 4 stars, no problem there. I have no problem with this. But I took a step back and I said, okay, but it was just a dumb action movie. When you come right down to it, was Mad Max any more? Did his sense of humanity? Did he really reclaim it? I don't know. He leaves at the end. He's exactly where
he takes a step towards regaining it, and this is
one of the things.
You know? Well, for starters, he stops them from driving out across the salt flats and dying of dehydration a few days later.
Okay, but that's the thing.
He
had in all of the movies, he had enough sense of humanity to not let innocent people die. Okay, in all of them. That's the one thing that defines his character, is that, in an utter wasteland of, filled with monsters and no humanity, here's one guy with just enough humanity to save innocent people. Which means he started off the movie that way, and that's exactly where he was by the end of it.
Oh, he started off prepared to leave them all in the dirt and drive off in the water truck, the war rig.
Well, they weren't. Yeah, at that point he figured they'd be okay on their own. See.
No, the other group was coming right behind them. He just wanted to get out of there.
He was in a rush.
You don't have a legitimate counter argument to my point, and you're just throwing up smoke.
I still don't feel like he was any. I don't feel like he really was any further along in his character. He certainly didn't break any new ground. He certainly did not regain his sense of humanity that was lost when his family was killed. I'll give you this. If there are parameters here of his humanity versus inhumanity, and he's sort of gone back and forth between the worst and the best, between the Road Warrior and Fury Road, and he's just sort of stayed within those parameters. He has not broken any new ground, nor has he regained the humanity he had before his family was killed, and he became Mad Max. So
I would agree with that.
So again, I would tell you, judging that independently against any other hero character, why, that's not interesting.
I think he's exponentially more interesting than anyone from the Transformers series, first of all.
Well, again.
Hang on. Okay, I'll take you one step further. Apart from the first Fast and Furious movie, and I'll give the first one a bit of a pass here for a variety of reasons, I think he's much more interesting than Vin Diesel's character in that series. Again, with the lone exception of a well-delivered monologue in the first movie, he's much more interesting as a character than, again, Vin Diesel, or by extension, since he's the most interesting person in that franchise, anyone else in that 8 movies.
No, I don't think that's true. I think Vin Diesel.
That's not a knock on Vin Diesel. It's just Dominic Toretto is a very flat character.
I don't think he is. He is flat, but he is not nearly as flat as Mad Max.
Again, I'm going to disagree with you there. And I suppose part of that is, some of this may be a bit of bias, because I firmly believe Tom Hardy is one of the finest actors. No, hang on. Look, I give Vin Diesel credit when it's due. I just feel that...
My overall argument is I think that this movie is hyperinflated in its criticism because of bias. I think, every reviewer who I take seriously and I'm interested in has just been gaga about this, and it kind of takes me back to the argument about the Avengers, where everyone thought the first Avengers was great when it really wasn't, but because they had more fun at that movie, they're equating fun with better crafting, and I think that's my frustration. Because as I said before, I'm willing to give this movie credit where credit's due, but I'm not going to sit here and be blinded by nostalgia or fan favorite. I'm coming into this cold. Up until yesterday, I didn't remember Thunderdome. I saw it when I was a kid, and honestly, none of it registered with me. I didn't really get it when I was a kid.
Because Thunderdome kind of sucks.
Well, I don't even remember the second. I think I only saw the first half of Thunderdome anyway. And I
Well,
never
then you
and
missed
up
the
until
half that really dragged it down.
and then up until last week, I never saw Mad Max before, nor have I ever seen The Road Warrior. So, one of the reasons why I wanted to do Road Warrior Week on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network was I wanted to get familiar with these films. So I'm coming into it as a new person watching these movies, and I don't have the sort of romantic attachment to it that I would think that you do. And I think you're part of it. I'm not criticizing. Well, I absolutely think that you're part of the hyperinflation of this movie that it doesn't warrant.
I think there's truth there. Look, I'll be the first to admit I don't consider this a perfect movie. I think part of the issue, and you at least go through and read the reviews from everyone, mind you, but I think a lot of the backlash from people, when I say like you, I mean, who are kind of cold to it and who are scratching their heads when they go into this movie is, for a site like Rotten Tomatoes, it's an aggregate. When it says it has a 99% approval rating, that means 99% of the critics gave it a score that indicates good. And it's not necessarily an indicator that this film is nearly perfect. It means, enough people liked it that it has a positive impression. And that's something that gets lost in a lot of art discussions like this, a lot of internet flaming, is a proper understanding of how that data is assembled and presented. Now, again, you have legitimate gripes because you're looking at what people are actually saying about it and going, wait, this doesn't make sense. My thing about it is this. I would consider this one of the better action movies of the last, however, feel free to insert whatever number you think here. And when trying to come up with an appropriate comparison, why do I think it's such a, why do I like it so much? Why do I think it's a good movie overall?
I would love for you to articulate for me a reason why this is a superior action film when you know just as well as I do how paper thin the plot is and how it's basically resting upon visuals. It's essentially it's a 2-hour car chase that looks awesome. And that alone doesn't make a good movie, yet you're calling it the best action film of X amount of years. Please articulate for me why, without reciting the fact that the car chase looks awesome.
Well, first of all, it does look awesome. Now, I understand that everyone is affected by this differently, but I hate bad CGI more than anything on the planet almost. And I've been taken out of movies like Transformers because of the CGI, because of its prevalence, because of its unreadability. I don't have that problem here. I don't have to deal with, first of all, the quality of acting. Now again, as we've discussed, there's minimal dialogue in this movie, so all of the acting tends to be in smaller spurts. A lot of it's done through, body language, things we learn about the characters through events around them. Again, Max is perfectly content to leave those 5 brides and Charlize Theron in the middle of the desert with 3 different war parties barreling down on them because he doesn't want to be bothered trying to bring them along. Furiosa hides some weapon in every conceivable compartment in the cab of that truck. Again, these are things that tell you about the characters. And I don't have to, so there's not a lot of dialogue. That's a double-edged sword, because if you have a cast that can't effectively, act without a lot of dialogue, you're going to get shot in the foot really early, and you're going to be limping for the rest, of the marathon. We have actors here who can do that, and that's a big part of it. I don't have to deal with actors trying to be more than they are. I don't have to deal with Mark Wahlberg on my screen trying to pretend that he's anything other than a guy marginally taller than Tom Cruise with a Boston accent. And that always bothers me. One of the big things that you and I complain about frequently with action movies in particular is when they have to stop for gobs of exposition. Because there's always a character who is there nothing more than to be the exposition dump. And, I mean, you and I always find that, and it always bothers us. Usually me more than you, mind you, but it bothers me a great deal when there's a whole scene that it is painfully obvious they wrote in just for exposition. And, which is fine, you need exposition in certain movies. The problem becomes you don't know how to integrate it into the story. All of the exposition in this movie is integrated well into the story. It fits into, points when the action is at a natural lull, so it makes sense. Go ahead.
Here's my fear. Here's my fear with movies like this, right? So everyone has been, and I can't disagree with a lot of what you said. I still think you're unfair to Age of Extinction, but we're not here to review that movie again. People would like to hear us yell and scream about it at one another. Go to my YouTube page, look for Mark Radulich. You'll find Robert, Winfree, and I doing live audio commentary over UFC events. You'll find a couple of independent movie reviews I did before I started the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. And you will find Robert and I doing an impromptu review of Age of Extinction on YouTube because Blog Talk Radio was being a fucker that night. But moving away from all that, here's my fear with movies like this, right? As I think about like the Red Letter Media reviewers and some of the we're talking like professional critics here that are just lauding this movie with praise. My fear is that we're going to I go back to this year's Avengers, which I thought was a fairly smartly written movie with some problems, but for the most part I thought it was smartly written. I thought it dealt with some interesting things. Next year we've got Civil War. Next year we've got Civil War, which also does interesting things. And people are going to continue to shit on those movies because it's not 2 hours of action. And that... Quiet, you crazy toy thing. I don't know if that guy actually picked that up at all, but one of the toy airplanes.
Heard it.
Okay, then. I'm afraid that this is going to signal to Hollywood, hey, if we can get a very talented director using practical events to blow shit up for 2 hours, we're going to make people very happy, and we're going to make, millions and millions of dollars at the movies. And I don't want that. I want movies that are about something that speak to, that speak to the heart and soul of humanity. I don't want a 2-hour car chase. I don't want 2 hours of the Avengers fighting one another. I want a movie in the traditional sense. And so I think that's why I'm so hard on this. Is like, please don't. I mean, once in a while, if you want to throw a bunch of cars or a bunch of planes or a bunch of people or whatever up on screen and blow them up, okay, give it its B and let's move on. But to give it an A+, I feel like you're signaling to the rest of the world it's okay to put shit on screen, as long as it's wildly colorful and entertaining, like we're a bunch of toddlers.
Hang on. Let me put this to you then. I agree with you by and large about Age of Ultron. I feel a lot of the criticism at it for not being, 2 hours of nonstop biff, bang, boom on screen is unfair, it's unwarranted, and unrealistic by and large. Let me throw this out to you, though. Do you really feel that the quality of writing for Age of Ultron is superior to this? Now, hang on. Before you answer with an emphatic yes and tell me to shut up, let me point this out. Hang on. They're written very differently. They have different styles, but the underlying quality, I feel, is probably comparable. Look, Joss Whedon does it through dialogue and exposition and, cutting scenes that maybe shouldn't have been cut while keeping stuff that maybe shouldn't have been kept and fighting with a studio the whole way. And look, it's Joss Whedon. We all know the man's strengths and weaknesses by this point. Or at least you should. If you were to give Joss Whedon Mad Max Fury Road, and it's feminist enough in its leanings to satisfy that particular bent of his politically, I don't think he has the chops to do this movie correctly. I don't think he can write this movie in such a way that, again, we get strong characterization without gobs of dialogue. I don't think the action would be framed nearly as well. And again, this is, if we're going to debate whether or not this is a style of writing that you like and you think everyone should do, there's no point arguing because you have a different perspective than I do, and that's fine and dandy. But this is a very well-written, and when you understand that writing is more than dialogue, it's a very well-written and well-executed movie. It's just done in a different style.
It's
now, as
too
to your,
simple.
Well, that can be difficult. I mean, look, it's easy to write, again, gobs of exposition. That's not terribly difficult to write.
It can be. Look, my wife. There's a reason why I did the gag with my wife, and I asked her, who's not somebody who thinks deeply about movies, and I wanted to know what she thought, and she said, "Drive Car, Save the Women." That was the movie, Rob. I mean, were the characters. I mean, if you forced me to a gunpoint to do
as opposed
character,
to Age of Ultron, which is stop the evil robot that wants to drop a meteor onto the planet.
There was more going on than that.
Oh, sure, because we had to set up Thanos.
I didn't take my wife to go see the Avengers. I took my 4-year-old, who, if I ask her what the movie was about, she'll say superheroes. She wouldn't be wrong. Look,
no,
I felt. I guess that's my problem with it. I think people want simple. They want fun. They don't want to be depressed when they go to the movies. They want to think about stuff, and that's frustrating for me. Who wants to be made uncomfortable? Who wants to be pushed? Who wants to be forced to think about things? Who wants to walk out of a movie and spend an hour talking about it with friends, and debating it and thinking about the kinds of things that the movie was bringing to light. I don't want to just mindlessly eat popcorn to stuff blowing up. Fury Road was an exhausting action demo reel, and I'll give you that it was carried by the weight of superior actors as well. Tom Hardy is a good actor. Charlize Theron is a good actor, and yes, they acted through the explosion. They acted through the costumes and the makeup. I will grant you that. And if, again, at gunpoint, if I am forced to come up with characterizations of these people, and their pains and their problems and everything else, I can do it. But to what end? I know, at the end of the day, it still comes back to drive cars, save the women. And that may be appealing to you and many other people, and you have that right. But as somebody who is seriously looking at film and judging craft, like I said, it's just a cookie. It's just a sweet little thing, to rot your teeth by and nothing more. I don't find any intellectual heft in this movie at all. And I know someone listening to this is going, and you found intellectual heft in the Age of fucking Ultron? And yes, I did, damn it.
The intellectual heft in the Age of Ultron was sadly stomped on by some poor decisions from a pacing standpoint and from certain, again, that movie, and I very much like that movie. Again, I did a review of it. I expressed my grievances. Mark did a little bit later on my other show. So again, we've discussed the issues we have with that, none of which is, I just feel that the intellectual heft of Age of Ultron is constantly trodden over, and it takes 2 or 3 viewings to finally kind of get some of the themes and subplots going.
You know what kills me? That we're going to review San Andreas in 2 weeks, and we're going to probably be having the opposite problem, where I'm going to tell you how much I love it, and how great it was to watch 2 hours of destruction porn, and you're going to be like, why? There was no movie there. and I'm going to point out the irony of that.
Look, I agree. We're likely to have that discussion.
Why is San Andreas a worse movie than fucking Mad Max when ultimately you have the same problem? It's a 2-hour action demo reel.
If I wind up having issues, I will be sure to properly articulate them, and I'll even keep in mind what again, a compare and contrast from San Andreas to this movie, since you're going to be bringing it up constantly.
All right.
I don't know. I mean, if you don't mind another odd kind of comparison here, I don't think this movie compares unfavorably with, God help me for comparing it to this, but I don't even think this compares unfavorably to something like Die Hard. And feel free to everyone scream at me, how can you compare anything to Die Hard? Well, again, there are things about the movies that I find similar. You have strong acting. You have a simple setup, a simple execution of a very basic story. You have, again, strong characterization to go with good acting. And you have a very well-executed movie from top to bottom. And, I mean, look, some of the same complaints you have about this movie can be leveled at any action movie. And in my case, I have leveled it at various movies from time to time.
Then why does this one get a pass? That's the question I have, and I don't know if we really answered it. Why does this movie get a pass?
Okay, I can't speak for everyone else. I can speak for myself. Why I prefer this movie to, again, generic Michael Bay movie, for, again, any of them. And there are some Michael Bay movies I very much like. I'm on record there. Why I prefer this to any of them, most James Cameron movies, I'm not all, mind you, most. If we leave off the first two Terminator movies, I can pretty much say all. Again, why do I prefer this to those? First of all, oddly, and again, feel free to yell at me, I think it's better made, honestly, and you and I, we touched on that. I think it's just a better made movie than, again, pretty much anything Michael Bay has done, a lot of James Cameron stuff. I don't know, who's another kind of prolific action director? I'll go with a producer, at least. Jerry Bruckheimer's stuff. He's a producer, not a director, mind you, but you know what you're getting into with his movies. You know what I mean. I think this is a movie that is made on a fundamental level at a much higher standard, to a much greater quality. Again, I think the acting is better, and it speaks volumes that, Tom Hardy can get more out of a grunt and motioning with a sawn-off shotgun than Mark Wahlberg can in, 5 minutes of talking to Optimus Prime. Or Nicolas Cage can talking with Michael Biehn in the, bowels of Alcatraz. Or Sam Worthington can when talking with CGI to Zoe Saldana.
I hear you and I hear others praise this movie, and it's now, I just got a vision in my head of what it reminds me of. And that's Peter Griffin praising Roadhouse.
Oh, that is so... Again, I find that so inaccurate. Mostly because...
He sums it up perfectly. No,
again, first of all, I will concede that part of Roadhouse's charm, I think, falls within the same vein. It's, for all the flaws, it's a well-made movie on a fundamental level. And it's a lot of fun. Hey, don't get me wrong. In a lot of ways, not good. And, as to why, again, back to your question, why this movie in particular gets a pass. Again, first of all, well made, well acted. It also feels, and this is a very odd thing, but again, for me, it feels like a complete, you're in a complete world. George Miller's vision of, the world having fallen apart after, oil shortages and then water shortages, is a fully developed, fully realized universe to go and inhabit.
Here's the problem. Unlike Thunderdome, which at least gave you some insight into the city, into Bartertown, and then into wherever the Lost Boys lived, okay, which I enjoyed, and it's part of my argument for why I think Thunderdome is better than Fury Road, in terms of craft and, and how they put those movies together. You got no real insight into Imperator Joe's tyrannical kingdom, because by the time, because the only glimpses that you get are when Tom Hardy's running through the place, and then when the the Warrior Boys are gearing up to go to accompany Furiosa out on the road. And then eventually when they all gear up to go after
Personally
her.
speaking, I wanted more of that, which is odd in a 2-hour movie. But again, look, you're never going to hear me say this is a perfect movie.
But that's my point.
That's not accurate.
There's so much focus on, oh my God, it's the best car chase in cinema history. It's even better than The French Connection. You know, it's even better than The Matrix 2. You know, it's just, hey, can you tell, folks, that I watch movie fights from the Screen Junkies Network? You know, that it's just the greatest car chase movie in the history of car chases. And then they don't spend any other time. I mean, you're telling me this is a fully realized world. Yeah, I get that if I watch The Road Warrior and I watch Beyond Thunderdome. I don't get that from this movie.
I'd say you can get it from this movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not as fully realized because of the style in which you chose to tell this one. But from the beginning, you are in this particular world.
No. They abandoned the world entirely in favor of showing you more car chase. You have no idea why any of these other people are joining this chase to go after her. You don't know what their relationship is to whatever, Imperator Joe's kingdom is. You know, I would have liked to have spent time with the people down there that would just, all you ever saw them do was fight for water. And at the end, then they celebrated in the water. That's it. You don't know, what other pains they're suffering. You don't know what's going on with these people. And why would you want to show the suffering of other people? That's not fun at the movies. See, this is my problem, ultimately, is that, and you and I talked about this, but for the sake of people listening to this podcast who don't follow us on Messenger, it was as if George Miller rewatched The Road Warrior and said, I wonder if people were bored with the first 2/3 of this movie. How about I just make a movie about the final third act car chase? And like purposely throws out everything else about, that what makes movies good and what makes them interesting. It says, hey folks, I'm only going to show you the part that you're really, that's really fun for you. And it's like, okay, so let's go back and make all movies this way. Let's go take Terminator 3 and only make it about the chase on the bridge.
Well, you've improved that movie, first of all.
Let's take Age of Extinction and only show the robots fighting and nothing else.
Yeah. Again, you've managed to somehow improve that movie.
Okay, if that's what, then I don't know why we're getting all bent out of shape about black stormtroopers, because all that we really care about is watching the Millennium Falcon fly.
Yeah, isn't it? Look, first of all,
then the Phantom Menace. Well, hang on. Then the Phantom Menace is the best Star Wars movie ever made. It had a pod chase scene and the most acrobatic lightsaber duel you've ever going to see in your life. So I would say
the Phantom Menace is probably the second or third best of those movies.
It's horrible. Are you kidding me?
Look, at the end, hang on. Come November, you and I are going to get into a big fight because I don't like Star Wars in general.
Oh, good. Fantastic.
Now, look, I appreciate it. I know why people like it. I am not a big gaga fan of Star Wars. I don't hate it, bear in mind, but I'm not I'm not a big fan of it.
Okay, so
you and I are going to have a fun discussion about that.
I'm sure we are. But by the Fury Road principle, the Phantom Menace is the best out of all 6 Star Wars movies. It had an elongated car chase scene, a pod race, and it had the best, choreographed lightsaber duel.
I will say this. Hang on. I will say this in that same kind of vein. I firmly believe Phantom Menace is probably the most fun out of any of the Star Wars movies.
I'm going to throw my fucking computer.
No, seriously. I think it's the most fun. That doesn't make it the best. Again, look, you want me to get into a technical argument about it. First of all, I consider it vastly superior to Attack of the Clones, which is awful. Just start to finish, top to bottom. I have nothing positive to say about Attack of the Clones at all, period.
Sorry, I wanted my wife to on something.
I have very little positive to say about Revenge of the Sith, but it's okay. But and Return of the Jedi, I like that movie less each time I watch it. There are things about it that just start bugging me. But I will say that Phantom Menace is probably the most poorly made out of any of those movies.
Not by the Fury Road standard.
Oh, no, even by the Fury Road standard. Hang on. Look, Fury Road is...
Before this continues, because I got to do this now before my wife throws something at me. I wanted my wife to weigh in on something because it was because other than her summation of the plot, I asked her, like, what did she think of the movie? Her reaction to me literally was, you know that scene... Hang on, she's up now. Melissa, tell everyone what your only reaction to the movie was, other than Drive Car Save the Women.
I have post-traumatic stress disorder from the milking room scene.
There you go, everyone. Okay? That's what my wife reacted to.
That was real life right there.
That's fair. No, look, my thing about this is if you're going to make a movie as simple as Fury Road is, and look, again, this is a very simple movie in terms of plot, in terms of setup. If you're going to go with a movie that simplistic, everything you do has to be executed nearly flawlessly, or the whole thing falls apart.
And I'll give you that. Now, it was a very pretty and executed well movie. Well executed movie.
And here's the other, and you mentioned you want to know why I think a lot of critics are very happy about this movie. I think it comes down to that by and large. There are so many movies that get released, even on wide scale, that are just poorly done.
Okay.
I mean, again, you and I, when we talked about Age of Ultron, I mean, some of the complaints we had, and again, some of them are not fair, some of them are very fair. What was the one we did before that?
So I want to go on. So I want to hear from you right now. Just don't go into a whole thing. Stars. How many stars would you give out of 5 stars? How many stars would you give Mad Max Fury Road?
3.5 or 4.
Okay, we'll say 4 stars. Be prepared to give San Andreas the same amount of stars.
We'll see. Again, the thing about this, and I will keep this very brief, if San Andreas is going to have the same kind of setup, again, very bare bones, very minimal, which most disaster movies are, it has to be executed nearly perfectly. And I'm more leery about San Andreas from an execution standpoint. That's where I am with that. Now, here's the flip side, and I am on record, everyone, many times over, and I'll say it here again, I have a real soft spot for big-budget disaster movies like San Andreas. I am very forgiving of them. Even when there are issues, I tend to enjoy them. And look, I can still enjoy 2012, and despite the myriad of problems with that movie. So when it comes to San Andreas, I might be more forgiving than you think, just because, again, I've got a soft spot for that genre. Now, it has to be executed well, and I imagine my big issue with San Andreas is going to be the quality of the CGI. Because if that's not good, it's got to be top-notch CGI, and it has to be consistently top-notch. Otherwise, I'm going to complain about it because, again, I hate bad CGI. Bad, it's not a quality thing. It's anything that takes me out of the movie. And CGI that is obvious tends to do that.
We have 5 minutes of live time left, and I have a question about our schedule that I want to pose to you. So if you've got any more questions for me or anything that's left unsaid, let's do it now or forever hold our peace.
Okay, real quickly then. There's been discussion of if this movie is financially successful, and it appears to be on track to be so. I would be surprised if it wound up being a financial failure. There's talk of a couple of more of these. Now, you and I will, if we're still doing this, we'll probably wind up going to see them just to review them, but okay, let me phrase it this way. Since George Miller kind of, threw a lot of the plot and a lot of the, in many ways, interesting things out of this movie in favor of, again, giant, well-made car chase for 2 hours, Do you think with a sequel he'll wind up integrating more of the, the humanity from the original trilogy back into the franchise going forward?
I don't know. He's got to do something different, though.
You can't do this again. I cannot see a functional. I can't see him doing this movie a second time and it being good. I just can't.
Here's the thing. I say that, I hear you say it, and then we've spent the last hour essentially, or at least I have, screaming and yelling that it's not right to just give people a demo reel and have it be so highly praised, and yet it was. I mean, you almost gotta imagine, George Miller talking to the studio executives, going, "No, we'll just keep doing that. It seems to be working."
I imagine that conversation will be reversed, and the studio executives will go, "No, no one wants to hear Tom Hardy talk. Blow more things up."
So I was just looking at some of the other Rotten Tomatoes aggregated scores. Next week will be.
Isn't Tomorrowland next week?
Tomorrowland is next week.
Okay.
Tomorrowland comes out this Friday, and then San Andreas is the Friday after. So we'll be reviewing Tomorrowland.
I gotta go watch George Clooney's chin.
Not only that, but apparently it got a 59% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, again, these are aggregates. Like, if I go to Rotten Tomatoes for something like that, I have to find critics who, even if I don't always agree with them, I find myself, understanding their perspectives. And I have a couple of critics who I know have a similar perspective and point of view and things that they like to me. So, again, when you go and you see the aggregate on Rotten Tomatoes, you really do need to find specific critics that are in line with your taste or are just very well respected in general, and kind of go from there instead of by, again, the aggregate. I'm leery because of two things. One, George Clooney, it's just George Clooney. And I'm very concerned we're going to have gobs of CGI and just a poorly executed vision of a film. That's my concern. I might be wrong, but that's, again, at a glance, my concerns would be summed up thusly. And I'm sorry I cut you off about talking about the schedule.
About talking about what?
You said there were some scheduling things you wanted to bring up.
Movies, and for people that are maybe have not kept up, we got Tomorrowland, San Andreas, Jurassic World, Inside Out, Terminator Genesis, Minions, Ant-Man, Mission Impossible 5, The Fantastic Four, and then I say goodbye to Robert for a little while. Maybe we'll come back and do Pan, and at the end of the year we'll be doing The Force Awakens. However, August 14th, Jed will be making his debut from the Casual Heroes on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, and we'll be reviewing Straight Outta Compton, because that's NWA week on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing an entire week dedicated to NWA. I expect Everybody Loves a Bad Guy to be focusing on gangster rappers. I expect Source Material to be doing a hip-hop comic.
That's not going to happen.
I expect an entire week dedicated to the brothers from Compton. In any case, but I initially left off Pixels, the Adam Sandler movie, because quite frankly I didn't know what it was and I wasn't really interested. And someone says Adam Sandler to me, and immediately I tune out. But from what I understand, this is looking to be one of the big summer blockbusters of the year. So I put it to you, Robert Winfree, should the Radulich Broadcasting Network take the bullet on this one and review Pixels?
It's Adam Sandler. Man, I hate Adam Sandler movies.
But does it rise to the occasion of everything else that we're reviewing?
Again, now I have to. I already used my get out of jail free card on Straight Outta Compton, because I have. Again, I have no interest in that. I would go watch it. I would hate every minute of it. I would be on here and I would complain about it for an hour, and no one. Again, I already know what would happen, so why actually put myself and everyone else through that? You and Jed will enjoy yourselves at that movie, and you will provide an interesting and probably a slightly more balanced review than I would. So I don't feel the need to just spew my personal bias out there. And the sad thing is I'm of the generation who is supposed to worship Adam Sandler, and I'm not. I'm just not. Nothing he has done almost ever has entertained me. But if this is if it's trending and it's looking like it's going to be a movie that would qualify as something we should review, I will bite the bullet and I will go see it so I can review it. Yes. Again, you are much more kind of aware of what's trending as far as, is this going to be a wide release that people are going to see and want to talk about? If you think it is, yeah, I will bite that particular bullet.
All right. Boy, July is really stacking up here because we've only got 2 movies for June. Pixels is like every Friday. July we've got a movie every Friday because it breaks down like this. June 12th is Jurassic World. June 19th is Inside Out. I've already made a daddy-daughter date to take my daughter to that. But July 1st, Terminator Genesis. July 10th, Minions. July 17th, Ant-Man. July 24th, Pixels. July 31st, Mission Impossible. So July's going to be pretty rough.
Here's the thing. If we get burned out, Pixels is the first one to get the axe. How about that?
Sure. But I think we decided there was nothing else in June we cared about, including Entourage.
God, no.
I
need to mention that I don't get it. I understand why people like that series. I do. I don't. I can't stand it. I watched the first 3 seasons, and I was just left with this big intellectual gaping, why did you put yourself through this?
Dude, June is a shit month for movies. Entourage, Insidious, Spy. Dope actually looks fun, but it's not enough for me to go to the movies to see it. Something called Big Game with Samuel L. Jackson. Something called Outskirts, and a dog movie.
Which Insidious is this?
3. And I'm sorry, and Ted 2, where Ted's going to.
No. Why has someone not shot Seth MacFarlane in the head yet? I really don't understand it.
Okay. So that was just a little bit of housekeeping that we needed to get done. Sorry if everyone was like, oh boy, well, as soon as you guys stopped talking about the movie, I tuned out. All right, so that's that. Tomorrow night on Long Road to Ruin, more Mad Max. Sean and I will continue the discussion of the Mad Max trilogy from start to finish, and I will go into great detail how I will compare the Mad Max trilogy to the Mariachi trilogy. I will also ardently defend Thunderdome and say how much it's a better movie than Fury Road.
You're very fortunate I'm not going to be on that show because we'd wind up arguing about this again. I find Thunderdome to be just weak from...
Because you hate children.
The first act is fine with him, getting robbed by Bruce Spence, returning from Gyro Captain to slightly more evil Gyro Captain. Him arriving in Bartertown is fine. His deal with... I don't like Tina Turner. She's just there to be there. Which, again, your mileage varies. His battle inside the actual Thunderdome is fine. The deal he made to get... Again, that's all fine. Then he leaves Bartertown and the whole thing falls apart.
No, it doesn't fall apart. You just don't like children. It falls apart
because then it's him with a bunch of kids, and I wanted him to strangle them.
I'm sorry you hate children.
I hate child actors who suck, and there were about 30 of them.
It was perfectly fine. Thunderdome was a well-crafted movie. The dialogue is a little hard to understand at times, and I think that's just because of the time, the early 80s. Plus, they're speaking in a sort of Cockney Australian. So, I get that. But overall, superior movie. It certainly wasn't a 2-hour fucking car chase. Once again, the car chase.
A 2-hour car chase.
Once
There's
again,
nothing
the car chase
in Thunderdome. Nothing happens in Thunderdome. Again, you have the one moment of redemption for Max at the end when he becomes selfless enough to allow everyone else to escape and throws himself kind of at the mercy of Tina Turner as far as that goes.
For the first time in the entire trilogy, he's an actual hero.
Yeah, look, again, I'm okay with that. The problem is I just find everything else about that movie to be just inferior.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Especially when compared with the superior films of Mad Max and The Road Warrior.
Well, more on this tomorrow night as I will prove Robert to be delusional in this respect.
I am neither delusional nor wrong about this.
So on Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, are you going to be talking about Lord Humongous?
No, because there's nothing to talk about with Lord Humongous. The guy in
right.
a gimp.
Look, character. He was a video game boss at best.
As
yeah. Was Joe.
I'm not disagreeing with that. At no point have you heard me disagree with those points, yet you crow them like you're right.
So what are you talking about on Everyone Loves a Bad Guy this week?
I'm not sure yet. I mean, I hate putting these things off, but again, there's no villains worth discussing in the Mad Max franchise. They exist, but the only villain in all 4 movies who's actually interesting to whatever degree is Toe Cutter from the first one.
I was going to say,
everyone else.
Desert.
What?
So the only villain in all of the Mad Max movies worth talking about is the desert.
Yeah, and it's not a franchise that has lent itself to vibrant villains, and that's fine. Again, the first 2 movies, much as I dislike Thunderdome and I have issues and reasons, there were certainly worse movies than Beyond Thunderdome. And even this one, I feel they could have devoted some time to both Immortan Joe, and you have the Bullet Farmer and the guy from Gastown who both come out to help him reclaim his women, and that could have and probably should have been fleshed out to varying degrees. But again, it's not a franchise that has lent itself to that. It's more about Max's search for redemption and constant battle against, the things that would deprive him of his humanity. And interesting and well done and all that, but I can't talk about it on Everyone Loves a Bad Guy because there's no bad guys worth discussing. Which is just how those movies are made. It's not a knock on any of them.
So you don't have a Beyonce dumped a 10,000 bottle of champagne in a hot tub. There you go. Talk about her and Jay-Z.
No, because then I'll just wind up wishing for more people to be struck by fast-moving buses. Again, I'll figure out what I want to do. I'll look at what's coming up next week as far as this. Yeah, I will have something on Friday. I will figure something out because I like doing the show every week. I forgot how much I missed it when I had that extended hiatus. But it will be there on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So stay tuned to the Radulich and Broadcasting Network on Facebook for a full announcement once I figure out what I'm doing. And again, Mark and I will be back next week for Tomorrowland. I host the 411 Ground and Pound radio show every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, talking about mixed martial arts. This week, we get to review UFC 187, the fight card that used to be awesome, and now I am just so deeply apathetic about it depresses me. I will also have.
I'm interested in Dan Cormier versus Fat Johnson.
You're interested in the 2 losers competing for the B prize? This is the losers bracket final. That's all this is.
They're both winners in my eyes. They didn't get caught in the car with cocaine.
Look, I'm not saying, and again, I had this discussion before. I don't think the UFC could not have done anything differently. Jones has screwed up so many times, they had to do this. This is no one's fault but his own. Unfortunately, as a fan, I look at Dan Cormier and go, you mentally broke after 10 minutes with John Jones. You're clearly not good enough to actually beat the champion.
You know what he is good enough? You know what he is good enough not to do? Not get caught in the car with hookers and drugs.
He's good enough at eating chicken to go back up to heavyweight and claim the interim belt when Cain Velasquez injures his Glavin again.
He's good enough not to get caught with hookers and cocaine and marijuana in the car.
Okay, look, do you want me to say he's a better person outside of the cage than John? From what I can tell, sure. But I don't care. I care as a fight fan about fights. Look, I didn't care about Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. You got a tax evader, a roid user, and a man with chronic domestic abuse issues. They both need to be hit by fast-moving cars if we're judging them on the quality of people they are.
I'm just saying I think it'll be an interesting fight to see two fat guys slug it out.
I don't care about that fight. I don't care about the co-main event. I don't care about the featured bout anymore either. Again, my interest for 187 was summarily shot in the head.
No, I'm excited for this card. Can't wait to see two fat guys. I can't wait to see two fat black guys slug it out for a belt. Can't wait to see Strong Island's own Chris Weidman, beat Vitor Belfort.
Oh, he's gonna crush Vitor Belfort.
I don't know what else is on the card, but I don't care.
The featured bout was supposed to be Donald Cerrone and Khabib Nurmagomedov, which I was very much looking forward to. Khabib got injured. Now it's Donald Cerrone and John McDessie.
Cool. I want to see Donald Cerrone finally fight for the title, so I'm okay with that.
You mean finally lose for the title?
Yes. I'd like to see him have a title shot.
I agree with you. He's going to beat this guy, and he's finally going to get the shot he deserves. It's not that I don't understand why people are interested in this card. I'm just not, and I'm going to be covering it for everyone this Saturday at 411mania.com in the MMA section. So stop by, say hello, tell me why I'm suffering from burnout, and I'm clearly not a fan of the entire sport because I don't care about these two guys fighting for a belt. That
have you actually
the champion never actually lost.
Did someone actually say you're burnt out and have no love for the sport?
Oh, I don't want to. Jeff and I were kind of joking about it on the Ground and Pound show on Sunday.
No. This was between you and Jeff. Then forget it. Never mind. I don't want to go down that road.
I imagine someone will bring it up. Look, I imagine I'm going to get a ton of angry people getting mad at me when Phil Brooks finally fights because I'm going to call him Phil Brooks. I'll get all the wrestling nerds angry at me.
Robert. All right.
Hey, look, if I'm going to stick to my guns here, if you're fighting, I refer to you by your last name. I went through the effort of typing out Filipovich for Crow Cops fights because that's the man's actual name. You don't get if I'm talking about a Rampage Jackson fight. I don't call him Rampage in coverage. I refer to these people by their last names.
All right.
Look, if the man was if he was in an organized sport, the back of his jersey would say Jackson, not Rampage.
Not if it was the XFL.
It's not, and we should never discuss that ever again.
So you know what I'm annoyed about? So apparently the Povetkin fight is going to be on ESPN2 on a tape delay this Friday, but they still haven't figured out what time yet, and that bothers me.
It's on tape delay, and you guys can't knock out a block of time.
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand what the deal here is. But all right, play the theme music. Get us out of here.
All right. Again, Mark and I will be back next week to talk about George Clooney's chin, a brief cameo by Dr. House, some random teenager no one's ever heard of, and a CGI fest that is Tomorrowland. Come back then. Again, tune in to all the stuff from the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We're on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, Stitcher. Follow us, subscribe. You can leave us comments, criticisms. You can rate us. We appreciate all of it. You can follow us on Facebook with the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. You get updates pretty frequently there. So stop by over there. Again, tomorrow, Long Road to Ruin, Mark Radulich and Sean Comer talking Mad Max. Come back for that one, everybody. Until next time, I'm Robert Winfree, for the mandated reporter who remains mortified at the quality of filmmaking going on in Hollywood right now, Mark Radulich, reminding everyone out there to please be well. What was that?
Goddamn right.
I'm reminding everyone out there, please be well, be safe, and behave, and here's the Muppets.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Hey, a movie, yeah, we're gonna be a movie,
starring